In the 13th and 14th centuries, the Mongolians created the largest land empire ever seen. They expanded from China, crossing the mountains near India, to numerous regions including the Middle East, from Persia to the Black Sea, South-Central Russia, Ukraine, and even as far as Europe near Vienna. This achievement was monumental. They employed various methods to achieve this, such as walking, using wagons, and utilizing horses, which were the fastest means of travel. By the late 1200s, as they approached Ukraine, some of their armies numbered around 100,000 soldiers. However, their power didn't solely rely on their vast numbers. They also employed a frightening strategy known as terror, and this practice began with their first great leader, Genghis Khan, who became a legendary figure. Interestingly, Genghis Khan is still regarded as a hero in Mongolia today, even though in some places people remember him for his ruthless actions. Let's explore some of the unspeakable deeds he committed against his enemies. Temüjin's sibling rivalry. Genghis Khan, originally named Temüjin, had a name that meant of iron, which suited him well as a leader who would leave an indelible mark on history. His early life was with challenges, quite different from later figures like Stalin, the Soviet leader. At just 14 years old, Temüjin experienced a crucial moment in his life. This moment involved his half-brother, Behter, and it was a mix of sibling rivalry, betrayal, and a touch of revenge. Legend has it that Behter, who was older than Temüjin, committed a big culinary theft. He took a fish that Temüjin had caught for their dinner and ate it all by himself, ignoring the hunger of his own family. This selfish act sparked resentment in Temüjin's heart. On that fateful night, Temüjin followed Behter in secret, waiting for the right moment. When Behter was alone and vulnerable, Temüjin used one of the famous Mongol recurved bows to strike. There's another version of the story that suggests Behter's death was more than just a stolen meal. In this version, Behter, as the eldest brother, acted like a boss, giving orders and asserting authority. This newfound power didn't sit well with Temüjin and his younger full-blood brother, Khazar. This version blurs the lines between sibling rivalry and seizing control of the clan. Genghis Khan's path of revenge. Life during the era of Genghis Khan, which stretched from approximately 1162 to 1227 AD, can be described as nothing less than relentlessly harsh. Genghis Khan's journey to becoming the Khan of all Mongols did not materialize until he reached the age of 44, but his path to power had already been set in motion long before that milestone. By the time he had reached the tender age of 20, he had already carved out a niche for himself as a promising military leader, taking command of his clan's army. It was during these formative years that he embarked on a path defined by vengeance, a theme of violence and retribution that would come to embody the essence of the Mongol way. The genesis of Genghis Khan's unquenchable thirst for revenge can be traced back to the brutal murder of his father, Yesügei, at the hands of a group of Tatars. These Tatars, who carried a tragic history with them, had been forcibly displaced westward by the relentless advance of the Mongols. Eventually, they settled in regions that would later evolve into southern Russia, Ukraine, and Crimea. However, their fate took a dark and fateful turn when they crossed paths with another potentate, none other than Genghis Khan himself. It was the Tatars who had orchestrated the poisoning of Yesügei, Genghis Khan's father, during a wedding celebration. Yet, it wasn't until a grueling 11 years had passed that Temüjin, as he was known in those times, confronted the primary Tatar army. This collision was nothing short of catastrophic, marked by large-scale carnage and bloodshed. Thousands were taken captive, comprising men, women, and children alike. They became the collective embodiment of punishment for the heinous murder of Yesügei. Genghis Khan's orders were uncompromisingly severe. Every individual above a certain age was to meet their demise. To underscore the gravity of his command, he walked over to a nearby wagon and marked a specific height on its wheel: 3 feet. The grim and unrelenting result was the mass execution of nearly everyone, sparing only the youngest children and infants. The Skull Pyramids. In history, there's a chilling chapter that tells about the pyramids in China. These aren't the famous Egyptian pyramids. Instead, they serve as a grim reminder of the Mongol Empire's ruthless rule. These eerie structures, so to speak, were built as a stern warning by the Mongolians to those who dared oppose them. It was none other than Genghis Khan himself who ordered their construction in 1215, just outside the city of Beijing, following a grueling 3-year Mongol siege. During this siege, the people of Beijing faced unimaginable suffering. Some were driven to desperate measures, including resorting to cannibalism just to stay alive. But even if they didn't resort to such extreme actions, their chances of survival were incredibly slim. Genghis Khan's reign of terror resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of people. Travelers and diplomats who witnessed this harrowing spectacle recounted tales of seeing pyramids on the horizon. However, these were not the majestic structures you might associate with pyramids. Instead, they were haunting formations constructed from the skulls of the fallen, reaching heights of perhaps 50 feet or even more. The landscape was marked by these eerie monuments, serving as a grim reminder of the brutality of the Mongol takeover. When the Mongols targeted a city they aimed to conquer, they followed a pattern. They would present the city's people with a choice: surrender and you will be relatively unharmed. Resist and we will kill you all. It's a somber fact that during Genghis Khan's relatively short lifetime, considering his significant historical impact, an estimated 5 to 10% of the world's population perished directly due to his actions. The Mongols weren't like modern soldiers with guns. They engaged in close combat with swords and bows, resulting in gruesome and brutal warfare. They were renowned for their toughness and their expansionist ways through relentless fighting. This part of history reminds us of the harsh and violent times of the past. Genghis Khan's daughter's role in power and alliances. Interestingly, a curious comparison can be made here, not from human history, but from the world of spiders. Just like female black widow spiders eat their mates after mating, Genghis Khan's daughters played a role similar to the black widow in their marriages. Marriage among the ruling Mongols and their allies and enemies on the vast steppes was quite similar to what you might have read about in medieval Europe. Daughters were highly valued. They were strategically married to strengthen alliances between different groups or to end conflicts and wars. Genghis Khan had many daughters, and they played a unique role in this complex dance of diplomacy and power. Their marriages could signal the end of one ruling family and the rise of another. But marrying into the great Khan's family wasn't just about love. It was a way for the groom and his family to gain respect and power. Unfortunately, this respect and power often didn't last long. To secure their place in the dynasty, tribal rulers who married into Genghis's family had to make a big sacrifice. They had to get rid of all their other wives. This was done to make sure there was no competition for the throne, which had to stay within Genghis's family. After these marriages, the groom often found himself in a position of high command on the front lines of Mongol warfare. It was a dangerous position, and sadly, many of them ended up getting killed in battles. So who ruled when they were gone and their sons were still too young? It was Genghis Khan's daughters who took charge. With each marriage and the eventual deaths of their husbands, Genghis's empire expanded, and his daughters were the ones making important decisions and giving orders. The Fall of Khwarezmia. Let's explore another part of Genghis Khan's story, focusing on his encounters with the Khwarezmian people. These folks lived north of what's now Iran and just south of the Caspian Sea. Long ago, they had a powerful and highly advanced empire in the area. The remnants of their civilization show impressive achievements in things like building and maths. Sadly, most of what's left today is just those buildings and numbers. And you can probably guess why. Genghis Khan. As Genghis Khan's armies got closer to the capital of Khwarezmia, he did something surprising. Instead of attacking right away, he chose a peaceful approach. He sent a group of his people to talk to the Khwarezmian folks and try to make a deal. But here's where things went really wrong. The Khwarezmian people got scared and thought it might be a trick, so they did something very bad. They killed the Mongol messengers. But it got even worse. They also killed another group of Mongols who came to make peace. You can imagine that this made Genghis Khan very, very angry. So he gathered an army of 200,000 soldiers, and they went on a rampage, killing almost everyone they could find. Genghis Khan then gave a really scary order: destroy everything in the land of the Khwarezmian people. That meant their castles, farms, houses, and pretty much everything else. A few small mosques managed to escape the Mongols' notice, but for all practical purposes, the Khwarezmian people were almost wiped out. Even their bones were ground into dust as Genghis Khan's forces tried to erase every sign of their existence. To make sure nobody remembered the Khwarezmians when the Mongols came back later, Genghis Khan told them to change the course of a river to hide any last traces of their civilization. The Lost Xi Xia People. Another story that adds to the harsh lesson of dealing with Genghis Khan involves the Xi Xia people, who lived on the steppes near the borders of Khwarezmia. The Mongols had already conquered Xi Xia, and Genghis Khan expected them to send troops to help him destroy the Khwarezmians. However, the Xi Xia people didn't join in. Genghis Khan saw this as an act of disobedience, and he wasn't one to let such things slide. He sent an army to deal with the Xi Xia, and tragically, every single one of them was killed. Not a single survivor. In fact, we might not even know about the Xi Xia if their stories hadn't been passed down through the oral histories of the people living nearby. The death toll was so immense that the Xi Xia language disappeared for hundreds of years. It was only when historians stumbled upon some carved stones with an unfamiliar language that they realized traces of this once thriving culture remained. These inscriptions were like a silent echo of a forgotten civilization. Interestingly, the Xi Xia people have had the last word in this tragic tale. During the battle with the Xi Xia, Genghis Khan was thrown from his horse and succumbed to his injuries in 1227. His body was taken back to his homeland for burial. Legend has it that he was interred with a vast treasure, enough to pique the interest of nations. However, modern historians believe in a different story. It's more likely that he was buried in a simple, traditional Mongol grave, deliberately unadorned to deter any would-be grave robbers. What's more, anyone who knew the grave's location was also eliminated, ensuring that the secret remained safe. According to Mongol beliefs, they anticipate that one day the Khan of Khans will rise again and lead them to glory, as long as the grave remains undisturbed. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Remember to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and share the video.